And good morning. Welcome to Jet Radio 1400. I am your host, Alan Carpenter. This is, of course, the half hour we spend with Josh from Stan's Garden Center. Josh, how you doing this morning?
You told me I need to bring energy to the radio.
Well,
I'm going to do that today.
Yeah. Well, because I really don't.
I'm not.
I'm just here.
I wasn't insinuating that. I'm not going to come out there and plant your flowers for you.
Okay.
Not that much energy to the radio, but I'll bring the rest of it for you. Verbal.
Well, you always do. I mean, because
abuse.
You not only bring the verbal abuse, but all kidding aside, you also bring years and years of knowledge here. So if you have a question about whatever you're growing, well, within reason.
I don't stop there.
451-1400 is the number to talk to Josh. And we were talking a little bit before the show about what do you want to talk about today. And we had on the planet the hottest day ever a few days ago.
That's almost surreal. That's hard to even verbalize.
It is hard to verbalize, and that affects everything that you do, everything you sell, everything you grow, everything your customers are growing. And it's hard to know, we've talked a lot about proper watering, but when it's that hot, it's hard to know exactly how to water, what to cover, what you even can do when things are that extreme.
There is actually this little thing that I learned in college. That I paused because a lot of people don't learn much in college.
Yeah.
I probably didn't either, but they actually said that certain plants, now everything varies a little bit depending on which plant you're talking about, which environment you're talking about, but the plant will actually protect itself and close its stomates. Stomates are very much like pores on our skin. So we open up and sweat, try to cool ourselves. That's what the Mother Nature's natural response is to cooling. Stomates are the pores in the leaf that actually exchange gas when the CO2 when photosynthesis occurs. There's a gas exchange there, and it also has to do with transpiration or the loss of humidity inside the plant. So when plants get to a certain degree, now stereotyping plants, it's right around 86 degrees in that ballpark. They actually close their stomates up in self-preservation.
Okay.
The reason I tell you this is that when you have that self-preservation mode and it's wicked, horrible hot, and you think, I need to take extra care of these plants, and you water them 3 times that day to make sure that they don't dry out, it's actually going the other way because they actually stopped. They actually preserved themselves and closed off. So it's easy to overwater a plant during hot times.
And tempting.
Yeah, because you think, I need to really protect. But actually they slow down their pull of water due to the fact that they go into preservation mode like that. So I think that was just my little tidbit about botany. I didn't know nothing about botany when I went to school because I knew, the retail side of what, I know what the plant is. I know what an impatient is.
Sure.
I know what a petunia is. But I didn't know anything about how that petunia functioned inside. So that was really interesting to me when I went to school because that was something that I really didn't dabble in before. So, and it was pretty cool. This is right up your alley. I'm certain of it. We actually learned botany in college by adult coloring books. Like we actually had...
I know about adult coloring books.
Big selections of all the different colors in pencil, and there may be like 100 different parts of the internal working of a flower or a leaf or whatever. And if you actually did your homework and colored the parts, then you memorized and learned the functions and the locations of that piece.
That's really interesting because plants are so intricate that looking at a chart or looking at a drawing and saying this is this, you're never going to retain that.
So when I kind of throw out the vocabulary now and then, like the xylem and the phloem, the two different types of cell that one moves food, one moves or nutrition, so to speak, and one moves fluid and water and hydration, I throw them words out because I learned it in a coloring book in college. So
that's interesting.
If you different color for each thing, and it's like very much like an adult will be told like, hey, if you really want to remember something because my memory is failing, write it down or write it down 3 times, and then it embeds itself differently. That's how all these words embedded themselves. I actually did my coloring homework. It was a bit peaceful, but I guess that was a little side note.
It is a nice, it does lower anxiety too.
Yeah, when you talk about all the pistil and the stamen and all the parts to the flower, I learned them with an adult coloring book. So then,
that's interesting.
That was and when I first got the coloring book, I'm like, really?
What is this?
I paid all this money to come to college to color with colored pencils.
Yeah.
But it actually worked. And the professor, now that I've completed, that course and so on and so forth, was actually an educational genius too. Like he made things stick with me today, which I guess was his job unknowingly then, of how it's done. So actually, when you're trying to get your kids to learn something, just give them a colored pencil and have at it.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting.
But, one of the things about soil and botany and chemistry that kind of tie together is I stuck with me that was preservation mode. So, going out there and watering them like 3 times when they actually kind of shut down, you're actually creating wet feet. So water deep and thorough as infrequently as you can get away with without seeing stress. That still stands even in the heat. That being said, I have had numerous clients that have basically said, and environment changes and things change so subtly sometimes. I don't think we realize that it happened. Like the tree got bigger every year. And now they're like, I don't know what you're doing different with the plants, but my yada yada just doesn't perform like it used to. And when we start asking questions, I'm like, well, when that tree was planted 15 years ago, it let a lot more light through. Its width wasn't as much. Its drip line, so to speak, was much narrower and let a lot of light through. Maybe we need to change plants. So there are a host of plants that if you have struggles, like if it's by the concrete and on the corner and it gets a lot of heat, plus our weather is changing. You get a lot more heat, a lot longer heat time. We have not seen it, Erie. A lot of folks have the 2 days that we've had so far that have actually been, 90-ish kind of days. And everybody's like, oh, it's such oppressive heat. I'm like, think of New Mexico. Like this is not oppressive heat. This is just a little summer taste. I saw in the news they're getting 120 down that southwestern U.S. I said to my wife, I'm like, that's just 120. That just sounds really hot. I remember when it used to be like, oh, we're going to hit 102 today. Like, whew, glad I don't live there. Now it's the numbers flipped and it's 120.
Yeah.
So, but there are plants that will tolerate that hot, really, dry. Like we actually have a display area in the front of stands. It's a xeric garden. It will tolerate wet. We actually pile the snow there, in the early spring, and it melts down and it drains through. It's a very well-drained soil area, but we've mixed that with things like Schizocurium. There you go. There's
a word. I like that.
That's little blue stem grass, which is a native grass, and it very, very durable to wet in the winter and dry in the summer, which is what that xeric garden, another vocabulary word, lends itself to. There's yuccas. There's color guard yucca. Color guard has that striped yucca. It actually has a real bit more compact than that really aggressive blue typical yucca. Color guard has a yellow and dark green leaf, so it's really attractive even if in its foliar. That's in that xeric garden. It actually has a more compact bloom to it. You get the really tall, almost as tall as you spike in the middle of that more blue typical yucca. We have a smoke bush in the middle of that. That's really vigorous, really neat. I put it in there for color and texture because smoke bush has a red leaf, and right now this time of year, as soon as we start getting heat, its bloom is a really wispy. And when the plant is more compact and in full bloom, it looks like it's smoking, like it was on fire, and you put it out. That bloom is very wispy. It's a grayish, purplish, looks like smoke, really. That's where it gets its name from. But I put that plant in there because it's very vigorous and quick growing, and it filled in an area that we had open for xeric too. It tolerated it's really hardy, cold hardy, and it tolerated that wet feet spring and hot, dry summer. So that smoke bush is in there. There's yarrow. Yarrow is Achillea, if you want the botanical for it. That is very tolerant as well, and it's blooming right now. So the xeric garden, or that rain garden area, is becoming way more popular in commercial designers around buildings. Where we have to have somewhere where the water will go. But then if it doesn't rain for a little while, that water is that area is very gravelly. It's made for drainage, and, so it dries out really quick. So some of those plants, if you look for xeric, are really interesting. But on that tone, if you're planting annuals and you've had an area that just it just doesn't do the same, if maybe you poured poured a concrete driveway and it didn't used to be or something. Now it gets hot and dry. The purslane, which is the rounder leaf cutting driven type of portulaca, is a absolute can't kill it. I recommend this for people that plant at the cemetery. Maybe you're going to go on vacation. You're not going to tend to it every day, every week, and you just want to plug and play and walk away. That purslane plant is indestructible. It's actually a cousin of a lawn weed. So,
is that right?
Lawn weeds you can't get rid of. They just
Obviously.
keep coming and coming and coming. So purslane, though, right now, this time of year, when you get that hot, direct, long day of sun, it's when it shines. It doesn't look the best when you even come in to buy it at like Mother's Day. It's not in its glory because it really thrives, shines, and is assertive this time of year when it's hot, dry, long days.
Yeah.
I think, did we just have that equal day? Didn't we just pass?
Well, I think we did. Yeah, the equinox.
So
yeah,
we're going. Well, we know we've both been going the other way.
Yeah, clearly.
I think our light quality and day length is going the other way now, already, which is depressing as all get out. I feel like spring. I'm sorry, summer. See, I even messed it up. Has just started for us and our staff because we're focusing on actually, I don't know, taking a shower or something.
But I get it though because yesterday was really warm, obviously, and I'm like, wow, it's really warm. And I thought, well, hold on, it's middle of July. Yeah, of course it's warm.
Yeah, it feels like it sneaks up on us.
Not
Maybe
May.
That's an age thing too.
I think it is.
Like, oh, Alan, what happened to April and May? Oh wait, it's July. What happened to June? Like that happens. But yeah, that hot time. I haven't seen anything yet around that has led me to believe that we're really in a detrimental state of heat and drought. Like the first thing you'll kind of start to see is the interior leaves on the birch. The clump birch really likes moist, damp, evenly moist areas. And when you start getting that really deep dry, that really starts to stress plant material out, your interior leaves of your birch, those clump birch, are kind of a tell for me. Like, okay, things are starting to see stress. That's one of the plants that I'll start to see early that'll start to drop. I haven't seen a lot of that. Maybe a little bit here and there, but not. In some years, I've seen them be almost defoliated. So we are getting enough even moisture to go ahead and keep things alive and hydrated and green. Even the grass now, I put down some feed, which I don't ever do during drought situations. You're adding minerals or salt. Okay, salt draws moisture. So if you have a drought situation where the grass is more kind of dry and brown than it is green, you want to hold back on some of that that salt and that mineral, even though you're thinking you want to help the grass. You want to make sure there's ample moisture. The more feed, not rate, but frequency, the more feed you use, the more water it needs to absorb and to move and to make that nutrition mobile. So I just put down some feed in some of our display beds and everything, and they look phenomenal. The grass is absolutely coming back from that little bit of drought time. So the other thing that we talked about as far as the grass area and such will be the weed killers. I actually put down a little bit of weed killer now that we have some moisture as well, whether it be selective herbicide, meaning in the grass that only kills the broadleaf weeds, or non-selective, which is trichopyr, glyphosate, your Roundup, that kind of stuff. That will be much more effective now that the weeds are growing because they actually grow themselves to death. I think we touched on that last week. So I've done a little bit of housekeeping around stands. I've been personally installing some of the color around so that we have the display beds popping when you come into the front areas. Yeah. What's going on at stands is it's loyalty loot right now. So
it's that time again.
I'll give you a little bit of 2 cents on the loyalty program. A lot of places you go, I feel whether it's true or not, I feel sometimes on the retail basis, folks are hounded so much with, do you have your whatever it is, your Shoppers Club card, you have your this card, you have your barcode, you have this. So it stands we have a loyalty loop, but it does not hound you. It doesn't actually push any sort of advertising or anything your way. Most of the time, if we did email campaigns, which we haven't even done at all yet this year, it is to give away something free. So most people don't mind an email when you win the lottery. So how the loyalty loot works is only redeemable in July, the entire month of July, and the entire month of November. A lot of times, folks use them up for years years. Like, just let it ride. Let it ride. It stays on our system. It
Right.
never depletes unless you utilize it and spend it. It's just like dollars. And it never declines or goes away. It constantly accrues. So what'll happen is after 3 or 4 years of gardening, not realizing that much time has passed, someone will say, hey, how many points do I have? Points are dollars.
Right.
Points equal dollars.
Right.
And when you say, oh, you have 310 points, well, it meant you spent $3,100, $3,100 over the period of time, and it accrues as 310 points. So every $10 you get a point. So when you come in and spend $10, so the reason for going ahead and giving us like when you come in and say Alan Carpenter or my phone number, we record you either by your name or your phone number. When you spend $10, you get a point back. So you actually got a 10% discount if you utilize that point. If you
That's right.
If you look at it that way.
I was thinking about that. Like if you spend $3,000 on a credit card and you got $300 back, you'd be thrilled.
No doubt.
Right?
So you get to do that. And each July and each November, when you utilize it, you can use your points on each purchase up to 50%. So what happens a lot of times when folks realize, wow, I have accrued $300. They come in and buy a fountain that they really have liked or looked at. They looked at it last year, like, I'm not going to spend hundreds on that. I'm going to plant my vegetable garden, which I get. Then come July time, they're like, you know what? I have all these points. I'm going to come in and get that fountain because that $300 fountain, I'm going to use 150 of my points. I'm going to walk out the door with that nice fountain, Mazzarelli fountain for $150. So use half of each one individual purchase. So that's how you redeem your points. That's how the program works. So the purpose for it is actually twofold, believe it or not. So say you get a tree and you got XYZ tree and it just, you struggled with it, it didn't do well or whatever, and you're like, I want to come in and talk to the staff, but let's just say you can't even remember the name of the tree. It died, now it looks like sticks. I'm not too good at that stuff. I don't remember what it is. When you came in and you said, hey, Alan Carpenter, I want to get my points, and you bought, it was a magnolia tree. Oh, all right. Then we can actually help, like say, okay, let's troubleshoot that. Was that a good place for magnolia? Let's get you something different. Well, at least we identified it. We know what it was. Our staff can help you out. So it keeps track of your purchases in a good way, too, so that we can actually look it up. There's actually been numerous instances that I've worked with customers that they planted a nice, let's say, hedgerow. One group of customers that I had was fantastic. They're like, we're so thrilled with this front area. So-and-so and our staff helped us out. We designed it all. But of these 10, I think the winter salt killed one of the boxwood. So, but now I see your inventory has 3 different kinds of boxwood. I don't have a clue which boxwood it is. Oh, give me your phone number. We'll look up your purchases.
Yeah.
So then we can see which boxwood it was so we can match with it. There's a whole host of reasons that are nothing but good for the customer, so that to help our staff help you. So when you give your number, not only do you accrue points, but it gives us the information to help you if you need it down the road.
Right. And you've always done it with, there's no spam, there's no crap, there's no million texts a day. They don't do it that way, but you're so right, because you have such a variety of everything you have, that if I came in and I said, well, I bought some tomatoes and they didn't work for me. You really need to know what kind of tomato.
Well, tomatoes are in our system, tomatoes are just going to be labeled as tomato, but that's a good teaser, because this is the time of year when we get a line of people literally struggling with the tomatoes. So yesterday people were sending me texts of pictures of, what is this? That's septoria. This, well, I don't understand. I run my lawn sprinkler every evening. I bounce that stuff back and forth pretty much for a living. So, when you can simply say, I bought it on this bench, it doesn't do it as good as being able to look it up in the system. But
sure.
I was kind of leaning more towards maybe the long-term nursery stuff. I think in the nursery,
because I fail with all of them, so I don't make a distinction.
Well, you just don't ask the right questions.
No, I don't.
You wanted to start the show talking about Mill Creek's coffee.
Yeah,
I was really open-minded. You're like the spokesperson for Mill Creek Coffee.
Doug is the head roaster, and he's a friend of mine. And you know something? You got to grow coffee like any other plant.
Can I get
maybe not in Pennsylvania?
Can I get a billing address for the for the show?
Yeah. That's a quarter right there.
That's a quarter. So no, I'm a big connoisseur of coffee. That's probably why why I can continue to do the hours that I do. So we were talking about coffee earlier, and I think we talked off the air about the danger coffee is in as far as environmental change as well. So that's another one. When you look at the change in environment, coffee is really under the gun in certain areas because of production solely for climate change.
Do people still use it in compost? The coffee grounds? Is that still? It used to be when I was growing up. It was coffee grounds and eggshells.
Yeah,
were
calcium.
The major components.
Yep, calcium, absolutely. So I just did which would take a 3-hour show for me to run through the whole side of nutrition and tomatoes. I think I've done that, with the root and the nutrition and why it pulls and how to water and stuff, over and over and over again. I'm a broken record. But someone just asked me, okay, I want you to end this. Are my eggshells doing anything wrong? And I said, no, it's calcium, period. It's calcium. So calcium and magnesium are two very strong elements pulled by the tomato that help it to create a thicker, stronger cell wall that ward off bacterial and fungal infections on their own. So when they can absorb that calcium and magnesium, now a good source of magnesium is Epsom salts.
Okay.
And your eggshells are good for calcium. But when I like to see the composting side, you asked about do people still use coffee grounds? Absolutely, because I like to see anything that's truly organic go in a compost instead of the landfill.
Yeah.
That compost, if you are a gardener of even small scale, when you break that compost and it's nice black rich material, so you got eggshells, you got even small amounts of paper that break down, you got coffee grounds, you got anything, egg or banana peels, all that stuff that breaks down to dark rich organic matter. That's the fix-all for all soil composition. So it increases your cation exchange capacity, which improves your sponge, so to speak, for how much soap your sponge will hold. To release nutrition and water to a plant. Organic matter actually increases drainage during wet season, increases water retention during dry season. So there's a whole bunch of check boxes. The organic matter is absolutely the fix-all for garden soil. So if you want that black, rich, victory garden soil and you don't want to spend a mint, just stop throwing your own organics into the landfill. I know it's easy. Just get a different trash can. You don't even have to put a bag in it because you don't want to end up with a plastic bag in your compost, and just throw that stuff in there and dump it in the compost. Let it break till it's black. You can even add microorganisms to it to help hasten that breaking process, and then put it right back into your garden soil, because that's not only keeping it out of the landfill, but it's absolutely increasing all of the good things in your soil composition. That's why farmers are using green manure. That's why they're using literally, cow manure and stuff they're putting out there, because they know that byproduct, it's not just to get rid of the byproduct of other crops, but it's also seriously improving the soil composition that they're working with in their crops. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, growing up next to a cornfield, I remember the days. Well, I let's put it this way: when I woke up in the morning, I knew when the organic matter was being spread.
and then you went and ate the cow slip from the ditch that was next to the
something like that.
So that's where all the flavor come from.
Something like that. Something like that. But all kidding aside, though, sure, manure is gross, but it's like we are talking about organic process. If you're growing corn, this is. People are so divorced from understanding the way that nature works and growing works.
It's a giant eagle.
It's like saying, you know what? I got some cauliflower. I boiled it, and there was a worm in it. Yeah, right. And the sun came up this morning too. I mean, that's the way it works. That's how it grows.
The other side of that is the over time, I think that control has been kind of bred into us. I saw an aphid on the peppers. I'm like, yeah, we'll hose it off. Well, what are you going to do? Like, well, that's just part of it, sometimes if you take that pepper and you just wash it off, a little aphid on the green was, we monitor at a threshold. So, you might see thrips are a massive problem in the horticulture industry in undercover green growing. So we have these little yellow sticky cards that the bugs are very attracted to, and they stick to it. So if they monitor once a week and we're like, oh, there's 3 thrips. it's not the end of the world. But if you see the 3 thrips go the following week from 3 to 30, then we need to monitor and we need to maybe use some controls. What we've done at Stans, this is just a little bit behind the scenes, is we've shifted a lot of gears from synthetics, where we used to just drench, like say we're going to put a pesticide in a soil and that plant's going to soak it up, and then we have to worry about nothing touching it because it's a toxic wasteland, to monitoring for biological. So we may inject nematodes into that soil, which are just not harmful to anything, anyone, any being, other than the larva of the thrip. So we stop that right in its tracks before it even becomes on the sticky card as an adult thrip. And so to back up, thrips are very, very small. They're elongated little bugs. Imagine like a little tiny, almost microscopic grasshopper. They're long shaped and they pierce and suck. And they're mostly after very soft tissue. So the very, very young top tissue or the bloom itself. They love the bloom itself because them cell walls in that flower are much different, much more pliable for them to go ahead and pierce and suck. So if you see, with a super, super common on Gerber daisies, even from your cut arrangements, if you see a little elongated line, that's where that thrip sucked out the good stuff, moved to the next cell, sucked out the good stuff, moved to the and it makes a little line. And thrips are very damaging to blooming products. So we used to just put some sort of synthetic in the plant, let it soak up and ward off all this stuff from the get. So now instead we're releasing hundreds of millions of beneficial nematodes that go after and attack the larva, the infant stage of these bugs that cause all the damage. So those nematodes are having a field day attacking all of its enemy and preventing the life cycle from ever getting to the adult that actually creates more thrip that makes the problem bigger.
Right.
So I actually had one of our newer grower staff actually ask me, like, hey, I have some issues on a few plants. Can you come look at them and identify for me? Yeah, absolutely. And I go and look, and I said, that actually is a parasitized aphid. So what's going on here, you don't really want to spray because these beneficials are all attacking the aphid. There's a little tiny, very, very tiny wasp that lays an egg inside the aphid, and that becomes its host body. I know this is probably a disgusting conversation, bug-on-bug warfare.
Yeah, it is.
But that little tiny wasp lays an egg inside the aphid, and it goes around and lays another egg, and it attacks the aphid colony to the point where that wasp, that little tiny wasp, and it's not the kind of wasp that you think you have to spray for that stings and hurts people. It's a little tiny wasp, attacks only aphids, and it lays its eggs. And that wasp has no bearing on plant material. It's after nothing other than reproducing inside the aphid body. So you want to let that be. We have gone the direction of biologicals way more. Years ago, let's say 10 years ago, I remember you'd never see a parasitized aphid. Now it's common to see them all over the greenhouse because that population of beneficial insect has actually gotten to a point where, and in the greenhouse, they winter very easily because they're so protected. The beneficial insects are outweighing the negative insects that actually attack the plant material. So the use for pesticides and synthetics has been depleted, which is a very expensive venture and dangerous. There's a lot of side effects too. There's re-entry times and stuff. Now we can put in nematodes and someone can go in and work in there 10 minutes later because the nematodes have no effect on people whatsoever. So there's a lot of change in the industry to get away from synthetics, and we're on board for that. We've been doing that for, I'd say, probably the last 6 years. We've been on beneficial programs much more aggressively. Yeah,
and I know from our past conversations, I know the research into that is really, really hot, and they're finding out a lot of things very quickly that just transform the way. Because when I was helping my dad, I'd walk around with a tank of 7 and go spraying everything, right? That's how you did it back then.
Yeah, even now, I don't want to make it sound like the pesticides are out to get us, and they did have a function. There was a time when, like, oh my goodness, we're just not going to have a crop unless we use Carbrel, which is your active ingredient of 7. What they've actually done, to not to drum the beat of the synthetic companies, because they're like pharmaceuticals, they're a profit-driven company as well. But they have done a lot of research to make sure that they can do the best, most effective job without with the least amount of impact to people and
Sure.
animals and the environment and stuff. So they've actually changed voluntarily, some by EPA registration, stuff like that. But now you'll find 7. If you read the label in 7, you'll find now that it appears, this is not a sales pitch, this is just a fact. It appears that it controls more insects. It has up to 500 additional insects to control, and it actually has a little bit of a, like say, anywhere from 30 to 90 day warding off. It uses some sort of enzyme in the material that just simply keeps the bugs away. Well, you have no reason to spray anything really toxic and chemical if the bug doesn't bother that,
Right.
i.e. cabbage. If you don't have any issues with bugs, then you don't even think about, I'm going to go to the store, buy a synthetic and spray it. So they've changed the formula to not only control more insects, so you would need less ingredients and less applications, but it actually is has a residual time that yet is not harmful for us to eat. It's actually something
Right.
that's keeping the bug away. And they've changed that to be zeta-cypermethrin, which is not Carbrel, which has been around as long as you and I have. 7 that you're talking about, the old Carbrel has been around a long time in liquid, in powder, in all kinds of formats. So the 7 company has engineered a new material that actually works better, that acts as a deterrent, and is less inhibitive in the environment than Carbrel was.
Okay.
So they are doing their homework to try to make a viable product without being so toxic.
You know, we've only got about a minute left, so let's make sure we get out Stan's hours and when people
you want
can
me to
get
remember
there.
my hours?
Well, you can cheat. You can look on your phone.
Sunday,
if you want.
11 to 4.
Yeah.
Dramatic pause.
Dramatic
So
pause.
whenever we do Facebook Live, Alyssa is always behind the camera. Alyssa's our crop manager. She is responsible for everything that hits the bench. She has a very daunting task, but she's also the one that we kind of do some of the Facebook Live with. And everything.
Yeah.
And it seems to be the hours is always. She's always in the background with her hand, with her camera,
Oh, okay.
giving
You
me
get
the
a cue.
numbers because I'm a little slow at remembering our own hours.
Well, you can go online and find the hours, and you can go to Stan's social media, which not only will give you the hours of the store and where the store is, but a lot of good information, too. And if you grow at all, it's certainly worth following Stan's on social.
11 to 4 on Sunday.
There you go.
Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6.
There you go.
I got it.
It's in there.
I told you, it's just slow. Not. I didn't know. I just a little slow.
It's in there. Thank you, Josh. Always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you.